isn't here. We move to question number 10 in the name of Deputy McAuliffe, please.
Cathaoirleach, Minister, last week Dublin City Council passed a €1.2 billion budget, one of the largest budgets that it has ever passed, and over the last number of years this government has supported many local authorities across the country. However, Minister, there are challenges going forward in terms of local government funding. We want local authorities to hold on to 100% of the local property tax in their area, and I'd ask you when we might review the baseline for funding for local governments.
Thank you, Cathaoirleach, and thank Deputy McAuliffe for his question. And just firstly to acknowledge that all 31 local authorities have now passed their budget, which is a huge achievement by the sector in very challenging circumstances, and we continue to support them in doing that. Local property tax was introduced to provide a stable and sustainable funding base to the local authority network, providing greater levels of connection between local revenue and associated expenditure decisions. Local property tax broadens the tax base by reducing the level of central funding required by local government. As committed for in the Programme for Government, Our Shared Future, a move to 100% retention of local property tax will take place in 2023. A move to this model will lead to an increased surplus for those local authorities with LPT income above their funding baseline, such as Dublin City Council and Fingal. These authorities shall now retain a greater proportion of that surplus for their own use in 2023, an increase from 20% of overall yield this year to 22.5% next year. A comprehensive review is currently underway of the LPT baselines, which has commenced and is expected to conclude in advance of the local authority budget process for 2024. This review will take into account the overall funding position of all local authorities, and the self-funding requirements will be considered in that context. Finally, any proposed changes to the current model will need to take into account the needs and resources of all local authorities, including those who have less ability to raise income, and will need to be considered within the parameters of the national fiscal and budgetary situation and the competing priorities presenting themselves at a national level. Thank you.
And I welcome the commitment to review the baselines and to do so, if I heard it correctly, in advance of the 2024 budget process. Local government funding is a bit of a dark art. I never know how. I spent 10 years in local government and I still can't get my head around a lot of it. But it is about retaining the local property tax in that locality, because if people pay that tax, they expect those services in that area. And while some counties may need more funding and do need more funding, that is a matter for national government, not local government. A new concept in this country, but we have to make sure that we stick to the principle. Unfortunately, because of a baseline funding set that sets a level of self-funding, any property tax, yes, will now stay in that county. But the problem is that they will reduce their grants to the tune of about 52 million in Dublin City and a similar figure in Fingal. So what's happening is we're letting them keep 100% of the property tax, but reducing the other grants that they may have. And I welcome the review because I think it will address that situation, Minister.
Thank you, Cathaoirleach. Absolutely, Deputy McAuliffe. The review is a very important mechanism to ensure that we have equity throughout the 31 local authority network. I think it is key in terms of government, the way we have intervened this year in very challenging circumstances to support local authorities vis-à-vis a number of funding streams. First of all, in relation to the energy support grant, which will assist them in terms of completing their budgets and has assisted them. Also in terms of the pay model that we have to refund through pay agreements and future pay agreements. We've also ensured that they will get 100% support for that. And also in relation to many acute challenges in relation to the rates revaluation. Again, we've had an additional funding working with Minister O'Brien, which we have allocated, which will assist them as well in the coming year. It is a very challenging circumstance, but they are doing incredible work, and it is a testament to the network that they all have passed their budget, as I said in my opening remarks, every single one of them on time, which we really value.
Cathaoirleach and Agazara. Minister, I met actually with all Dublin TDs last week with the team from Dublin City Council, and I also met with the finance subcommittee, many good councillors from across parties that want to see more for their county and to do more with more resources. So I welcome the commitment that you've given here, and I want to thank all three ministers and their colleagues in each of the parties for working with it on this to deliver this review. You mentioned pay, Minister. I suppose that is one other element. I know Dublin City Council says that in the next 2 years, the additional pay commitments as a rise of wage agreements would amount to 41 million. But the number that they have now, in terms of central government funding, will be 35.8 of that 41 million. So I think answers I get from the Department of Public Expenditure say that there's 100% funding, so I think we need to find that gap and nail it down. But I'll also look forward to Jim Gavin's report on local government funding. I think we can do a lot more. There's local taxes that Dublin City and other councils could also administer, and there's local decisions. The more power we devolve to local government, the better in this country as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, thank you again, Cathaoirleach. And a large proportion, around 287 million, is towards pay agreements and trying to assist local authorities in meeting them. The Department is also separately doing a piece of work with the Department of Public Expenditure and Reform and the local authority network to try and get to the bottom of the funding refunds, because there is an estimation within the local authority system in terms of how much pay has to be calculated in advance of the refund for the pay agreements, and obviously that has to be reconciled properly, but we are very committed to supporting them. I think 287 million is a key factor in doing that. That's action really demonstrated to ensure that they could pass their budgets and citizens right across the country have that certainty that their services will be protected.
Minister, you might engage with councillors if you can as part of the review process.
Okay, we move now to